What historical fact makes you cry?
In World War II, an American pilot named Charles Brown was flying a B-17 in a bomb raid over Germany where his aircraft was severely shot up and entered a free fall when Brown passed out. When Brown awoke, he was only a few thousand feet above the ground and barely was able to recover the aircraft. When the Luftwaffe spotted a limping B-17 far below the formation, they dispatched a pilot named Franz Stigler, a soon-to-be ace just 1 kill away, with 2 downed B-17s earlier that day. As he approached from the rear, Stigler noticed that the B-17's tail gunner didn't move and after further inspection, realized he and several other gunners were dead. Stigler saw this and remembered what his flight instructor had said years ago, "If you shoot a man in a parachute, I'll shoot you myself." Stigler saw this limping B-17 as no different from a downed pilot in a parachute. To prevent German flak cannons from taking it out, Stigler flew in formation with the B-17 all the way until the English Channel where it landed safely. Stigler never mentioned the incident, and could have been court-martialed for it. Decades later, Charles went looking for the enemy pilot that saved his life that fateful day, and eventually met him face to face, becoming close friends and dying just a few months apart from each other in 2008.
WW1 Mercy Dogs, they would go out into no man's land and find wounded soldiers. They would bring medical supplies for the soldiers to patch themselves up. Or if the soldier was too mortally wounded, stay and comfort them in their final moments.
I learned about this in a Dan Carlin podcast. During the German-Soviet War, there was a Red Army soldier who sang each night with a hauntingly beautiful voice. His comrades would give him their tea rations and scarves to protect his larynx. One night, he couldn't sing because he had gotten sick. A German soldier crawled across no man's land and tossed something into the Soviet trench. The Soviet soldiers thought it was a grenade. However, it was a package containing a letter asking if the singer was okay and if he needed medicine. A truly heart-warming moment in an otherwise horrific front. Edit, thanks for the awards and upvotes. Seriously, though, if you are even remotely interested in history, you can't go wrong with hardcore history. I never knew that I wanted to listen to a man talk about a topic for 16 hours.
The story of Alex 1977 to 2007, an African gray parrot who learned to speak, recognize objects and play with his owner. It was one of the smartest parrots ever reported. He loved his owner and his owner adored him as well. In the end, he suffered arteriosclerosis, so his owner went to see him one last time, to which Alex told his owner, "You are good, I love you." She replied, "I love you too." He said, "I'll see you tomorrow," and she replied, "Yes, I'll see you tomorrow."
When Alexander Hamilton's eldest son died, his second child Angelica Hamilton had a mental breakdown and she never recovered. Sometimes, her family would walk into a room with only her in it, and she would be speaking to her dead brother.
It's gotta be Franz Ferdinand's last words, considering he was so sympathetic to the Serbian cause only to be killed by a Serbian nationalist himself, and was begging his wife to stay alive for their children as she was pregnant, and trying to assure the people around him that he was fine as he slowly faded into death, and it ended up starting an event which then decided the whole course of the 20th century. Edit, I made this post a little late so I won't be replying to any more comments because I have to sleep, so don't expect any more replies or answers from me. Sorry if you wanted some, but every man's gotta sleep. Edit 2. Yes, I know that this wasn't the event that technically started the war. I know it was going to happen anyways. I just said that it started World War I because it's usually known as the event that started World War I. Sorry about that, but I'm just trying to help those that don't know as much about this event as others.
Teddy Roosevelt's mother Mitty and his wife Alice, who had just given birth days before, both died in the same house on the same day, hours apart from each other. In his diary entry that day, he drew a large black X and scribbled, "The light has gone out of my life." That's some heavy beat right there, man.
Christmas Day, 1914. German and British soldiers got up from their trenches and called a 48-hour truce to just chill and even play soccer. This makes me cry because it shows that the soldiers of both sides really found it pointless to fight other people just cause their country said so. This is probably the strongest story of unity I've heard about in history class.
The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. The doors to the exit and the stairwells were locked. So you either had to jump out the window or be burned alive.
There were approximately 300 infants and children that were murdered in Jonestown, being forcibly fed or injected with cyanide. I feel so much pain for all the victims, but the kids in particular make me ache with despair.
Henry Gunther was an American soldier killed during World War I at 10:59 a.m. on November 11, 1918, 1 minute before the armistice took effect at 11 a.m. Gunther charged a German roadblock outfitted with machine guns. German soldiers tried waving him off, knowing the war would come to an end in mere moments. Apparently he got too close, fired a couple rounds, and was promptly shot and killed instantly.
This soldier, I realized, must have had friends at home and in his regiment, yet he lay there deserted by all except his dog. I looked on, unmoved, at battles which decided the future of nations. Tearless, I had given orders which brought death to thousands. Yet here I was stirred, profoundly stirred to tears. And by what? By the grief of one dog. Napoleon Bonaparte, on finding a dog beside the body of his dead, licking his face and howling, on a moonlit field after a battle. Napoleon was haunted by this scene until his own death.
The story of Joe was tested and found to have an IQ of 46, and the mind of a 6-year-old. Despite this, Joe O'Reilly was executed at the age of 23 by the state of Colorado. In addition, Joe was innocent of the crime for which he was convicted and the victim of a coerced confession. Joe's mental challenges were so significant that he didn't even understand he was about to die as they walked him to the gas chamber. While held on death row during the appeals process, O'Reilly often played with a toy train 9, given to him by prison warden Roy Best. The warden said that O'Reilly was the happiest prisoner on death row. 7. He was liked by both the prisoners and guards. Best became one of O'Reilly's supporters and joined the effort to save his life. 6. He said of O'Reilly before his execution, he probably didn't even know he was about to die. All he did was happily sit and play with a toy train I had given him. 1. For his last meal, O'Reilly requested ice cream. When questioned about his impending execution, he showed blank bewilderment. 7. He did not understand the meaning of the gas chamber, telling the warden no, Joe won't die. 10. He was reported to have smiled while being taken to the gas chamber. Momentarily nervous, he calmed down when the warden grabbed his hand and reassured him. 7-11. Whenever I think about him smiling and walking to his death, it makes me beep ill. And deeply ashamed of the system of governance that allowed it to happen, even 80 years removed from it.
Breakup of the Kalmar Union. Basically, this kick-ass Danish queen united Denmark, Norway, Sweden and Finland, only for her beep heir to beep it all up.
The Sand Creek Massacre is particularly bad. They had so much faith in the peace treaties that had been signed, the signs of good faith from American settlers, only to be massacred. The leader of the camp, Black Kettle, desperately holding up the American flag he'd been given with a white flag underneath it, encouraging his people to gather around it, thinking that the settlers would realize they were allies and stop the killings, only to be shot down. The descriptions of the massacre are brutal: children tortured and slaughtered, pregnant women with their children torn out of their stomachs, genitals torn from corpses and taken for trophies. It really made me realize you can never underestimate the cruelty of mankind, especially considering most of the murdered in this massacre were defenseless women, children, and elderly.
A letter from the Civil War by Sullivan Ballou. My very dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. I have no misgivings about, or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans on the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and sufferings of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life, to help maintain this government, and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence could break, and yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me unresistably on with all these chains to the battlefield. The memories of the blissful moments I have spent with you come creeping over me, and I feel most gratified to God and to you that I have enjoyed them for so long. And hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years, when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together, and seen our sons grown up to honorable manhood, around us. I have, I know, but few and small claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me, perhaps it is the wafted prayer of my little Edgar,
that it shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, and when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless and foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness. But, oh Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you, in the gladdest days and in the darkest nights, always, always, and if there be a soft breeze upon your cheek, it shall be my breath, as the cool air fans your throbbing temple, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead, think I am gone and wait for thee, for we shall meet again. Sullivan Ballou was killed a week later at the First Battle of Bull Run, July 21, 1861.
Most if not all the astronauts aboard the Challenger survived the explosion. It was the crash into the water that would have killed them.
Sacagawea, who accompanied Lewis and Clark on their expedition to explore the lands we now know as the Western United States, had a vital coincidence on the journey that always makes me emotional to think about. She was born a Shoshone but was taken around the age of 12 and made a slave to the Hidatsa. After being with them for 3 or so years, she was sold to a French man named Toussaint Charbonneau, who took her as a wife. When Lewis and Clark met her, she was about 16 years old and pregnant with Charbonneau's child. The birth was a tough one and Lewis helped with the child's safe delivery before Sacagawea and Charbonneau joined them on the expedition. Lewis and Clark knew they would meet the Shoshone on their journey and were hoping Sacagawea could help them procure some supplies, especially horses, to help them cross the Rocky Mountains. Sacagawea didn't speak English. She spoke Shoshone and Hidatsa. Charbonneau spoke Hidatsa and French, and one of the members of Lewis and Clark's expeditions spoke French and English. Suffice to say, translation was complicated and complex. When the expedition finally came upon the Shoshone's territory, they agreed to meet and hear Lewis and Clark's proposal. They sat down around the fire and began negotiations. The chief of the tribe began to speak with Sacagawea and the conversation proceeded rapidly. The others, unable to really understand what was going on, were confused when she and the chief began to cry, and then to embrace. In the years since her capture, it turned out, Sacagawea's brother had become chief. He had believed her dead and she did not recognize him at first. The celebration, when the tribe learned who she was, and the appreciation bestowed upon Lewis and Clark for returning her, is hard to completely express. From Wikipedia, Lewis recorded their reunion in his journal, shortly after Capt. Clark arrived with the interpreter Charbonneau, and the Indian woman, who proved to be a sister of the chief Kameawait. The meeting of those people was really affecting, particularly between Sa Cah Garwia and an Indian woman, who had been taken prisoner at the same time with her, and who had afterwards escaped from the Minatares and rejoined her nation. Whenever I start to think about what she went through, from her capture and slavery among the Hidatsas, to her being taken as a wife by Charbonneau, traveling across largely unknown lands with people whose language she didn't speak, to finally being reunited with her family, it always makes me emotional. She went through so much.
RMS was the first ship to arrive on the scene when the Titanic hit an iceberg and sank. Every one of the Titanic's 705 survivors were rescued by Carpathia, which made a tremendously heroic effort that night in the North Atlantic. The scene is dramatized in A Night to the classic film from 1958, and one of the more accurate, especially given the constraints of technology at that time. Harold Cottam, the radio operator on Carpathia, had already gone off duty when the Titanic's distress signals were received. He immediately conveyed the message to Captain Arthur Rostron, who jumped out of bed and ordered the ship to change course. There's this Tumblr that summarizes what happened next far better than I could. I had to sit down and stare at a wall for a while when I first read it.
There's no more wolves in Ireland.
The burning of the library at Alexandria.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.